Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm playing paradigm chess, where bishops turn into dragons. Dragons can move like a bishop and a knight that can't jump. Starting positions are also scrambled. My goal is to win 5 games. Let's get started with game number 1. Okay, this will be interesting because in the last series I played a lot of games that had weird takes on knight pieces like this dragon bishop, and I've also played chess 960. So we'll try to apply what I've learned. We get e4, rightfully attacking the center right away. I will play e6, and I think my idea here is develop the knights, push d5, push the queen, and then castle as quickly as possible. The sooner I can castle, the sooner I can focus on just attacking and not have to worry about my king being safe or unsafe. We get pawn to f4, we'll go and play knight to b6, continuing with the same idea. We get knight to e5, which is quite strange. I'll go ahead and take it because it doubles the pawns, which I assume has to be a good thing for me. And I'll go ahead and play, well actually now that I think about it, I'm about to play d6 and undouble my opponent's pawns. But I get ahead in development in the process, right? If we get this capture, I take back with my dragon, I have 2 pieces developed, and my opponent who's playing as white has 0. So this should still be better for me. Is this piece free? Moves like a knight and a bishop, and it's unobstructed, so that should be completely free for me to capture. Go ahead and take that, and now we're threatening the rook as well. Nice, knight to c6 seems to drop the rook. We'll go ahead and take it. This is my redemption move. I don't know if you guys remember, but in the first episode where I played Dragon Bishop, I completely missed a free queen. But I'm not missing any free pieces this time. I'd actually argue that playing all of these variants has improved my board vision in very strange ways. We get dragon to e3. Not only do I have to watch out for my opponent's free pieces, I have to make sure I don't hang any free pieces. I'm gonna move my dragon back just out of a little bit of nervousness that I will hang a piece. We get pawn to h4, seems to threaten this move, but I can always just shuffle out of the way after. So I'll develop my dragon to the only square it can move to, e7. Dragon trade is totally fine. Since I am up material, what am I up right now? A rook and a knight? So I'm up material. I should be more than happy to trade. Dragon targets the queen. I'll go ahead and take on g3 with check. The king is now exposed, so if there's any way I can follow through on this attack and wrap up this game, that would be spectacular. Let's try out this check. Okay, we get dragon to e3. I can actually put more pressure on this dragon with the knight, so I'll play knight to c4, right? Whenever we have a pinned piece, we want to put as much pressure as possible. Not to mention that there was actually a very interesting discussion in the comments section last time about how much a dragon is actually worth. Real quick before I tell you guys what most of you guys said, drop in the comments what you personally think a dragon bishop should be worth, right? It moves like a bishop and a knight that can't jump. What a lot of you guys said in the last episode was that it should be worth about 5 points. And I would probably agree. About 5 points seems to make sense, considering that it can move like a bishop and a knight, but maybe you subtract a point because the knight can't actually jump. Let's go ahead and take this pawn. There's no check because the queen covers that square. We get rook to d1. I'll go ahead and castle. And this should be a relatively straightforward conversion. I just need to trade pieces, maybe promote to something, put pressure on my opponent's position, and this should be a pretty easy checkmate. Nice, we've eliminated my opponent's queen. Very, very nice. We do get the first win. Nice. I was going to say we've eliminated my opponent's queen, which defended the back rank. So I was going to go in for ladder's mate, which would have been super on brand for me, but oh well. We don't get ladder's mate this game, but we do win game number 1. Let's go ahead and move on to game number 2. It's really crazy how I can feel that my board vision has improved just by playing a bunch of variants. I'll go ahead and attack the center here again. I don't think there's any reason to play anything strange. But it's crazy how I've gone from missing a free queen, I will never get over that, to kind of feeling comfortable, I'd argue, with moving my dragon bishops around. I don't really want to develop my dragon this early, but I'm going to move it kind of like a regular bishop. It's strange because assuming the dragon is really worth 5 points, it'd be the equivalent of dropping a rook on f5 with just different abilities, right? The rook could be targeted a little bit easily and you'd be a little bit afraid to lose it. That's kind of what I feel by dropping the dragon on f5. We get pawn to f3. Go ahead and develop one of my knights. Okay, there it is, right away we get targeted. I'll move my dragon back to g6. And if we do get h4, oh, we get f4. f4 seems to allow me to just centralize my dragon and hit the rook, however. This might be a fair trade, which is kind of interesting. Okay, and that's definitely a fair trade. Actually, is this pawn free? If I take that pawn, my opponent gets the d5 pawn. I could play e6. And I like that a little bit more because it leaves the tempo on my side of the board. So I'll take on c2. Oh, and I give check as well. Oh, I didn't even consider that. Okay, we give check as well, so I don't even have to lose this pawn, I don't think. We'll move the dragon back, with check. How interesting. And in the process, we defend the d5 pawn. Okay, knight to c3 doubles down on that pawn. We'll play e6. We've now connected our dragons, which I don't know if that's actually worth anything. And I will retreat this dragon to d6. I've kind of lost track of actually just developing and castling, so I'll continue with knight to d7. I'm sure we'll get this trade. The center will start to open up in a little bit of a weird way, but if I can castle and even line up this rook with the king, then e5 is actually looking pretty nice for me there. I'll go ahead and castle right away, and if my opponent shows no signs of intending to castle, then I'm just blowing up the center with e5. Okay, I'm going to set it up by playing dragon to e7 with the idea that when I push, this dragon and the queen defend the pawn from the other dragon and my opponent's knight. And the reason I want e5 so bad is to open up this file, basically open up the floodgates for my pieces to start attacking my opponent's king, and I think I'm looking pretty good there. Okay, dragon to d3 doesn't actually defend this, I don't believe. So let's push e5 and just go for it. Okay, we do get the capture. I'll go ahead and take back with my knight, with the idea that my knight is worth less than the dragon, so if we get this trade, I'm actually in a good spot. Okay, dragon takes on d5, but that's defended. I'll go ahead and take it with my own dragon. I believe we've just won a piece for a pawn there. Okay, dragon takes on e5, I'll take with the knight. Queen to f5 does give check. I can probably just retreat the dragon and hit the queen at the same time. And now I've opened up this discovered attack on the king. And this is actually a good example of why you like to play with concepts, because there's no way that I could have told you that this exact sequence of moves would have happened. And we do get the resignation as well. Nice, we win game number 2. Let me just recap real quick. This is a good example of how, without knowing how the game was going to end, I just know that conceptually, setting up a discovered attack, or rather opening up the center while the king is still there, has to lead to some sort of advantage. And there it is. I could have never predicted that it would have been exactly that, but I knew that that situation was more likely to arise. Anyways, we are now 2 for 2. Let's move on to game number 3. All right, game number 3. We've been given the black pieces again. Our opponent starts with e4. And looking at this arrangement, I would assume the natural way to develop here would be to like move some of these pawns, develop the knight, queen to c7, and then long castles. So it's kind of like playing a Sicilian, and I've just overcomplicated it with that explanation. My opponent develops the dragon hitting c5, I'll play d6 to defend it. We do get pawn to e5, which seems to invite takes, and then queen takes back with check. It does develop my queen a little bit early, but it puts my opponent in check, so I'm happy to bite. Cool, we'll take back with check. And this hasn't changed much about my plan, because now this knight is pinned. In fact, it holds back the dragon, so I'll play... It holds back the dragon. Such weird sentences. Anyways, we'll play knight to c6. I'm sure we'll get booted here in just a moment. We'll move the queen out of the way, and then we finish up with our development, and then castle. Okay, knight to d3. That's exactly what my opponent plays. And I will play... I'll actually play queen to c7. Actually, no, then I lose this pawn. This is the only problem with developing your queen so early, is that now like queen to h5, I get hit by another dragon. Things can go haywire quite quickly. Okay, it's not what I want to play, but I will play queen to c7. I'm okay with hanging the pawn as long as it gives me the initiative again, right? If my opponent takes, I play e6. I'm now the one hitting the knight, and I'm the one kind of causing the tempo to go by. So I'm forcing my opponent to make a move, and then I can make another move, and so on and so forth. Okay, we do get knight back to d3. I'll play knight to b6. Notably, my opponent's king is still in the center, and okay, c4 may be an actual attempt to play queen c2 and then castle long. I'll try to beat my opponent to the punch with long castle myself. Queen to c2, maybe I can look for knight to d4. Target c4, obviously hit the queen. Oh, we get pawn to c5. Oh, that's pretty aggressive. Pawn to c5, I'll play knight to d5. I'm totally cool with this trade, putting some pressure on this pawn. Sure, actually, maybe I should take with the pawn. No, I'm quite happy with developing my rook towards the center. Knight to f4 is free. Okay, we take knight on f4. Nice. Not to mention, we're actually threatening checkmate now. Okay, dragon to e3. Let's see if we can punish our opponent for leaving the king in the center. It seems we can't right now. In fact, I've actually been forked here if you think about it. Luckily, I would argue the rook and the dragon are probably worth about the same, so I'll just drop my queen back for the time being. But I guess there it is. That's what I was talking about in the first game, about being careful about developing your pieces towards the center, at least the valuable ones. Don't tell the bishops and the knights that I just insinuated they're not valuable. Anyways, we get pawn to b4. I guess this trade was left on the board. I should probably start focusing on developing some of these pieces. Let's do that by playing dragon to e7 with the idea of dragon to f6, and then the other dragon can develop down the same route. We get pawn to b5, very aggressive attack on my king. I'll play knight to e5, centralizing the knight, opening up the attack on that c5 pawn. Okay, we get queen to b3. I'm a little bit nervous about this attack. It seems to be quite effective, and it'll probably be backed by an extra piece in just a moment. So I should probably be looking to trade off some of these pieces. Let's try knight. Oh, knight to g4 is actually free. Knight to g4 is free. Okay, never mind. Maybe my board vision isn't as good as I thought it was. Let's take this pawn with the dragon. Right, I probably should be a little bit nervous about rook to c1. Maybe I can follow it up with another dragon. There's always the idea of discovered check, taking the rook. We are also hitting the queen. Okay, we do get the trade. I'll take with the rook. Right, if I'd taken with the queen, I didn't really like my queen and the king on the same file. But now our rook kind of serves as a bottle cap to this. We get queen to h3. I should probably just focus on developing, but it's so tempting to just hit the king. I'm going to play it. I'm going to play rook to c1 check. We'll get this trade. We'll force the king out of its little cubby on the back rank. And then I'll see if I can follow up that attack. King to f2 doesn't seem to leave a lot of free stuff. I can't even take this pawn because it's defended by the dragon. So I'll play my dragon to e7. Just kind of developing my pieces. Okay, dragon to e2 seems to just hang the rook. So I'll take the rook. And I think we're just completely winning now. Queen to c3 check is a little bit annoying. Oh, wins the knight actually. Okay, it definitely wins the knight. I'll move my king out of the way. And after this check, I guess I'll just shove him into a corner and try to forget about him. Okay, queen takes g7. Oh, super annoying, actually. Let's play check with our dragon, try to win back the initiative. Oh, there's d4. Oh, I've just realized there's d4, which hits the dragon and the rook simultaneously. Okay, this may not be as... Oh, queen to d4. Why queen to d4? That's just free. Oh, no, it's not. Okay, actually, it's not even free. Well, it kind of is free if you think about it. Dragon takes back, hits the rook, but I'll target the dragon itself. Not to mention the pawn right behind it. Okay, dragon hits our rook, but we'll go ahead and take the pawn. And we should have checkmate here momentarily. Okay, let's take here with the queen. As long as I don't manage to lose a queen and a rook to a dragon, this should be completely winning. Okay, we've forked the king and the dragon. We're winning the dragon on the next turn. And we've now closed in on the king. We have forced mate, and we win game number 3. Nice. This is turning out to be quite the rating climb. We've gained some 50-something points of rating since we've started this. Normally in the last series, this is where the video would end, but a lot of you guys have requested that I just play more games in each video, so our target is now 5. Let's go ahead and move on to game number 4. All right, game number 4. Finally, I get the white pieces. I'll go ahead and play d4. We do get the queen and the king on the normal starting squares. And e5, was that pre-moved? I'll definitely bite. Let's take e5. I'm definitely somebody, when you offer me a gambit, I'm probably going to accept it. And we're going to find out whether or not you know your gambit the hard way for certain. We get knight to b6. I believe, though, that this may have just been a pre-move looking for e4. Knight to b6, we'll go ahead and develop our knight to f3. Knights, I've already realized in this variant, are good to develop first because they're worth the least, but they also control a decent number of squares. We get c6 kind of targeting e5, but it's not really a concrete threat, so we'll play knight to b3. And my next step is to play like e3, dragon wherever, I guess e2 is fine, and then just castle. I can start looking for more complicated ideas or actual attacks after I've castled. I definitely don't want to get in trouble with my king still in the center. Okay, my opponent is either having a huge idea or is AFK. We'll see which one it turns out to be. When you see something like this happen, you have to ask yourself, is my opponent having a big think or a big stink, right? Sometimes you play variants to pass the time while you're on the can, and here I am waiting for you to make a move while you wash your hands, but it seems to be my opponent has left. This is giving me extra time to reflect. Think about why I'm here. Why am I playing Dragon Knight chess? Am I trying to avenge the free queen that I never won in that first game I ever played? Yes, the answer is yes. You know what? I'm quite glad that my opponent took that time to be AFK. It gave me a lot of time to reflect about exactly what I'm doing here at this board. Nice. And we do win game number 4. I'm going to count that as a win just because of the sheer amount of time that I spent here. Let's go ahead and move on to game number 5. Maybe we can get 5 for 5. Okay, game number 5, we get the white pieces again. I'll start with d4, just trying to attack the center. We get d5, I'll play knight to f3. Again, developing my knights first. I'm not sure where I should actually put the dragons. My opponent seems to have the same idea about developing knights first. Okay, knight to f6, perfectly symmetrical. I'm totally okay with this. I'll play e3 with the idea of developing my dragon to d3, creating this battery, and then frankly just castling out of the way sooner rather than later. We get pawn to c6. Go ahead and play bishop to d3. Queen to c8 is very amusing. Seems to want to develop the queen a little bit too early, which I'm not particularly afraid of. So I'll go ahead and castle anyways. Okay, dragon to e6. The dragon has now been developed, which tells me I should probably start targeting it. c5 seems to be a natural square for that. We'll play knight to c5, considering the knight is worth less than that dragon. And we get dragon back to c7, rightly moving it out of the way. Let's go ahead and play a4. I'd kind of like to boot this knight so that I can push c4. I can start grabbing a little bit of space and a little bit of initiative, considering that my opponent is still 1, 2, 3 tempo away from being completely castled and safe. Okay, we do get pawn to e6. I'll go ahead and boot the knight. Actually, if I boot the knight now, there's knight to c4, retroactively hitting that same pawn. So I guess b3 is necessary first, and then a5. Okay, we get dragon to d6, which seems to threaten the knight on c5, but actually I would argue that I'd be more than happy to accept that trade. One, because it's actually defended twice. I've just realized this dragon would actually be able to take back. But number two, because the knight is so much less valuable than the dragon that I'm cool with leaving a pawn on the table with that trade. Oh, we got resignation! Oh no, I was yapping for so long that my opponent got frustrated and just left the game. Anyways, I will consider that win number 5. Oh, who am I kidding? That's no way to end a season premiere. Let's go ahead and move on to game number 6. All right, game number 6, we get the black pieces. We'll go ahead and start with kind of the same idea, pawn to c5, sort of like a Sicilian, just in a completely different universe. Okay, we get knight to d3, hitting the pawn. I'll actually defend it by moving this pawn to e6, defend it with my dragon bishop. Kind of works more towards development. Oh, and we get the free knight, sweet. And I was gonna say helps move us towards pawn to d5 as well. We can start opening up the center, clearing some lines for our pieces to come out. And we're probably not gonna castle long side here. We're probably gonna castle to the king side, now that the queen side is opening up a little bit more, which means we have to develop the queen. I'll go ahead and start with knight to c6. I think it's still valuable to develop the knights first, even though ultimately I'm probably gonna have to squeeze my queen out through e7 before castling kingside. We get knight to e3. That doesn't create any new threats that I can see, so let's play knight to b6. And I think for right now, this dragon bishop is actually best placed right where it is on b8. It might even be slightly better placed on c7, but it shouldn't be a great difference. Okay, f4 is definitely free. Never mind. This bishop is actually best placed on f4, where it just took a free pawn. We have this knight pinned to the queen as well. Queen to f2 hits the dragon bishop, and I'm actually gonna move it back to h6. Keep some pressure on that knight, and the last thing I have to do to actually develop is shuffle my queen out and then castle. Pawn to e5 seems to invite this capture, so I will take a free pawn. Not to mention we have knight to g4 coming up, right? This knight is still pinned, so the knight can't take it. Dragon to e4. Dragon to e4 threatens the pawn on b7, but doesn't seem to resolve this threat. So I'm still going to follow through on it. I think I'm still going to play knight to g4. That should... Oh, it's also threatening my dragon bishop. Oh no, I hadn't noticed that. But we do win the queen in the process. So what have we lost here? We've lost a queen and a knight. No, we've lost a dragon bishop and a knight for a queen. Is that a fair trade? Honestly, it might not be. There's still this dragon bishop putting pressure on the b7 pawn, which is quite annoying. I still haven't managed to develop my queen. I might have just fumbled that. Let's play f5. Let's play a little bit more aggressively. Get the queen out this way. Maybe we can castle once this dragon bishop picks up that pawn. Sweet. Oh, it's actually, not to mention, it's actually hitting my rook now as well. So I'll play rook. Oh, rook to b8 invites dragon here, which is check. Actually, no, it's not check because there's a pawn in the way. Okay, rook to b8 should be totally fine. Dragon bishop retreats, and it's not actually hitting the rook because it's blocked by this pawn. So queen to f7, and we're just looking for castling now. Pawn to c5 clearly hits the knight. If I move my knight, it invites the dragon bishop to come out. It's not real. Oh, it is a huge issue because it wins the rook. Okay, we're sacking the knight. We're castling. We're getting our king out of danger. We'll obviously give up that knight, and now we're just looking for an attack on the king. We have to justify the loss of material by basically storming the king. Okay, that dragon is definitely free. I guess there's knight to e5 now hitting the queen though. Okay, knight to a3 doesn't create any new threats, but it does unleash the dragon on the rook. I'm gonna play rook to a4 with the idea of kind of doing like a rook lift over to the king side. We get pawn to b3, we'll jump in with that check, defended by the dragon bishop. And we get the resignation, very, very nice. Probably a little bit premature, but there were ideas there of like king back. We develop the queen by hitting the knight, queen to c5 gives check, and it can get a little bit complicated for my opponent. You know, dragon comes out to defend, but then it's pinned, so rook here. Rather, terrible arrows as usual. Rook, oh my goodness, rook here hits the dragon bishop with 2 new pieces, and that probably would have been completely winning. Anyways, if you guys did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know down below if you particularly enjoyed this variant, and don't worry, just because I've started this new series doesn't mean I won't try any new variants. Leave a new variant down below. If it gets a bunch of likes, I will try it out in a future video. I will see you guys in the next one.